When my Uncle Frank stood at my mother's funeral and whispered to his kids that she was finally gone and they could clean up her mess, I thought he was talking about her medical bills. The cancer treatment had drained her savings, and I'd been preparing myself to help sort through the financial aftermath. But as I watched him survey the funeral home like he was calculating the value of the flower arrangements, something cold settled in my stomach. I never imagined he meant stealing my childhood home and everything my mother left behind. The way he smiled that day should have been my first warning. It wasn't grief, it was satisfaction. My name is Melinda Rayburn, and I'm about to tell you how my 61-year-old uncle tried to erase my mother from our family's history, how he convinced his own children to betray their cousin, and how a single phone call from a stranger exposed 30 years of his deception. But what makes this story worth telling isn't the betrayal or even the money he stole. It's the fact that my mother, Dorothy Rayburn, a retired nurse everyone dismissed as too trusting and too simple, had been preparing for his greed since the day she was diagnosed. She knew exactly what Frank would do, and she planned for it with the precision of a chess master, setting up a checkmate 15 moves in advance. This is the story of how a dying woman protected her daughter from beyond the grave, how a hidden safe in a basement changed everything, and how sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one holding all the cards. My 8-year-old son, Tyler, says his grandmother was like a secret superhero. After everything that happened, I think he might be right. What Frank never understood about my mother was that 30 years of nursing had taught her to read people's vital signs, not just their blood pressure and heart rate, but their intentions, their greed, their desperation. She could spot a liar from across a hospital ward, and she'd been watching Frank lie for decades. Life after losing my mother felt like walking through fog. Every morning, I'd wake up in my small 2-bedroom apartment on the west side of town, make breakfast for Tyler, and catch myself reaching for the phone to call her. It had been 3 weeks since Dorothy Rayburn passed away, and my body hadn't caught up with reality. My fingers still knew her number by heart. My ears still expected her voice at 7:30 each evening, asking about our day. Dorothy Rayburn had been my anchor through everything life threw at us. She spent 30 years as a surgical nurse at Riverside General, working 12-hour shifts without complaint, coming home with stories about patients she'd helped heal and families she'd comforted. Even during her own battle with cancer, she maintained that same steady grace. "Pain is just information, sweetheart," she'd tell me during her chemo sessions. "It's telling us what needs attention. We just have to listen and respond with love." The last 6 months had been the hardest. Watching someone who had cared for thousands of people struggle to accept care herself broke my heart daily. "Mom, why don't you move in with us?" I'd asked her countless times during her treatment. Tyler and I had cleared out the spare room, bought a new bed with safety rails, researched the best home care equipment. "Sweetheart, that old house has all my memories with your father," she'd always reply, her hand squeezing mine with surprising strength. "Let me stay where I feel closest to him. Besides, you need your space to be a mother to Tyler, not a nurse to me." The house on Elm Street wasn't just property to our family. It was where my father, James Rayburn, had carried her across the threshold as a young bride. It was where Dad had taught me to ride a bike in the driveway, his strong hand steadying me before the accident took him when I was just 5. Mom had raised me alone in that house, keeping Dad's memory alive in every corner. She'd sewn my prom dress at the kitchen table, the same table where she'd helped me with homework for 13 years. 3 generations of Rayburns had carved their heights into the doorframe of the pantry, a tradition started by my grandparents in 1962. Tyler loved visiting his grandmother there more than anywhere else in the world. "Grandma Dorothy's house smells like cookies and old books," he'd say, and he was right. She always had snickerdoodles in the ceramic jar shaped like an apple, and the built-in bookshelves in the living room held first editions she'd collected from garage sales over 40 years. He'd curl up next to her on the worn leather couch that had been my father's favorite, and she'd read him stories from the same books she'd read to me. "Tell me about Grandpa James again," Tyler would ask, and Mom would describe my father like he'd just stepped out for groceries and would be back any minute. She kept him alive through stories of his terrible jokes, his love for Cubs baseball, his ability to fix anything with duct tape and determination. During her final weeks, when the hospice nurse started coming daily, Mom had seemed urgent about something beyond her physical pain. Everything important is exactly where it needs to be, Melinda, she'd told me one afternoon, gripping my hand tighter than her strength should have allowed. Remember what I taught you about keeping records. Remember about the filing system. I thought she was talking about her medical paperwork, her insurance forms, maybe her will. She'd always been meticulous about organization, every receipt filed, every document in its proper folder, every important paper in triplicate. One for you, one for them, and one for proof, she used to say. After she passed, I assumed we'd have time to sort through everything properly. The funeral was small but beautiful, filled with former colleagues from the hospital, patients whose lives she'd touched, neighbors who'd known her for decades. Frank had given a speech about family legacy that seemed heartfelt at the time. Dorothy carried the Rayburn name with dignity, he'd said. Though something in his tone made my friend Denise squeeze my hand in warning, I'd planned to take a week off from teaching, to go through the house slowly, to let Tyler say goodbye to each room, to pack up her things with the respect they deserved. We'd keep what mattered, donate what could help others, and make decisions as a family about the house itself. But 3 weeks after the funeral, when I finally felt strong enough to face that empty house, I discovered that Uncle Frank had already made those decisions for us. The locks had been changed, and everything I thought I knew about my family was about to shatter. 3 weeks after the funeral, I drove Tyler to Mom's house to collect some photo albums. He'd been asking about the picture of him and Grandma at his 5th birthday party, the one where she'd made him a dinosaur cake from scratch. When we pulled into the driveway of the 2-story Colonial on Elm Street, something felt wrong immediately. The spare key wasn't under the ceramic frog where Mom had kept it for 20 years. I tried my key. It wouldn't turn. The locks had been changed. "Mommy, why can't we go in?" Tyler asked from beside me, clutching the teddy bear Grandma had given him last Christmas. My hands shook as I dialed Uncle Frank's number. He answered on the 3rd ring, his voice casual like he'd been expecting my call. "What do you mean you sold it?" I shouted into the phone, not caring that Tyler was watching wide-eyed from beside me. "Lower your voice, Melinda. This is a family matter, not a neighborhood drama." Frank's tone was cold, calculated, nothing like the man who'd delivered that touching eulogy. Dorothy never contributed anything to this family's wealth. That house was bought with Rayburn money, our parents' money. She just lived in it rent-free for 40 years while the rest of us actually worked for what we have. She was married to your brother. My father was a Rayburn, too. For 5 years before he died. Then she just squatted there, playing the grieving widow, taking advantage of our family's generosity. Do you know what that property is worth now? $400,000. Money that belongs to the real Rayburns. My stomach churned. She raised me in that house. She was your sister-in-law for 40 years. How can you say she contributed nothing? Being a nurse isn't building wealth, Melinda. It's just a job. My dealerships, those created actual value. Bradley's real estate company, that's a contribution. Even Stephanie's marketing firm brings something to the table. What did Dorothy ever do except take up space? And what about me? I'm James's daughter. That house should pass to me. Frank laughed, an ugly sound that made Tyler press closer to my side. You? You're a public school teacher living paycheck to paycheck. You couldn't even afford the property taxes on that place. Bradley and Stephanie agree with me completely. We already split the sale money 3 ways. Consider your mother's medical bills that I graciously didn't pursue your inheritance. I hung up and immediately called Bradley, my cousin who used to spend summers with us at the house, who Mom had taught to swim in the community pool. His secretary said he was unavailable. He never called back. Stephanie sent a text 2 hours later. Uncle Frank handled everything legally. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Mom Dorothy would want the family to move forward. The next morning, I sat in the office of Robert Merchant, the family lawyer I thought would help me. He shuffled papers uncomfortably, wouldn't meet my eyes. Frank had power of attorney, Melinda. Your mother signed the house over to him 3 months before her death. Here's her signature. He pushed a document across the desk. There it was, Mom's handwriting, though shakier than usual. The date was from her worst period, when the pain medication was so strong she could barely recognize me some days. But she was on morphine. She could barely hold a pen. He must have pressured her, confused her. Merchant shrugged. The The signatures are authenticated by a notary. Without concrete evidence of coercion or incompetence, there's nothing to contest. Frank also has records showing he paid for various house repairs over the years, strengthening his claim. I'm sorry, but legally he had every right to sell. My friend Denise found me sobbing in my car outside the courthouse. She held me while I explained everything, Tyler in the back seat asking why Uncle Frank was being mean. "That bastard planned this," Denise said. "He waited until Dorothy was too sick to fight back." For weeks, I tortured myself with questions. Had Mom really signed those papers willingly? Was she confused, pressured, threatened? Or was I just refusing to accept that maybe, in her pain and fear, she'd wanted Frank to handle things? "Why are you so sad all the time, Mommy?" Tyler asked one night, climbing into my lap while I stared at old photos. "I just miss Grandma Dorothy's house," I admitted, hugging him close. "Me too. Remember the treasure hunts she made for me? She said there were secrets in every corner. She said the house would always remember us, even if we couldn't visit anymore." I kissed his head, wondering how I'd explain that Uncle Frank had stolen not just a house, but every physical piece of his grandmother's memory. The photo albums, her jewelry, my father's watch, the quilts she'd made, all of it gone, sold or divided among cousins who wouldn't return my calls. Frank had erased Dorothy Rayburn like she'd never existed at all. 2 months passed in a blur of anger and resignation. I'd thrown myself into teaching, grading papers until my eyes burned, anything to avoid thinking about what Frank had stolen from us. Tyler had stopped asking about visiting Grandma's house, but I caught him looking at her picture every night before bed. I'd started accepting our new reality: no family home, no keepsakes, no closure. The Rayburn family inheritance had been divided, and we weren't considered real Rayburns anymore. Then my phone rang on a Tuesday afternoon while I was grading spelling tests in my empty classroom. The number was local but unfamiliar. "Is this Melinda Rayburn? Dorothy's daughter?" The voice was gruff but kind, like someone who worked with his hands and spoke straight. "Yes, this is Melinda." "Name's Roger Hutchins. I bought your mother's house from your uncle. Look, I'm renovating the basement and we found something interesting. Really interesting. There's a safe built into the foundation wall, hidden behind a false panel that was covered by old shelving. It's got your name engraved on it." My heart stopped. I set down my red pen, watching the ink bleed into a student's paper. "My name?" "Says, for Melinda Ann Rayburn, open only with love." "Ma'am, I could break it open, but something tells me your mother wouldn't want that. The craftsmanship on this installation is precise, deliberate. Someone went to a lot of trouble to hide this. Do you know the combination?" I did. The memory hit me so hard I had to sit down. I was 16, the day before I left for summer camp. Mom had pulled me into the basement while Dad's old workbench was still there. "Melinda, I need you to memorize something," she'd said, her face more serious than I'd ever seen it. "Your father's birthday, 04151963. Say it back to me." I'd repeated it, confused why she was being so intense about numbers. "Some things are worth protecting," she'd said, "and some protections need to stay secret until the right moment. Promise me you'll remember these numbers." I'd promised, thinking she was being overdramatic, but I never forgot them. They became the rhythm I counted to when I was nervous, the pattern I traced when I couldn't sleep. "Mr. Hutchins, can I come by this evening? I can bring the combination." "Of course. Bring whoever you need to feel comfortable. I know this must be strange, getting a call from a stranger about your mother's house." That evening, Tyler and I stood in the basement of my childhood home. The smell hit me first, Mom's lavender sachets mixed with old wood and something indefinable that just meant home. Roger Hutchins was a burly man in his 40s, with calloused hands and kind eyes. He'd pulled away an entire section of wooden paneling to reveal a professional-grade wall safe I never knew existed. "Your mother must have had this installed special," Roger said, running his hand along the edges. "It's built into the foundation itself, behind the original construction. Unless you knew exactly where to look and what to look for, you'd never find it. I only noticed because I was checking for water damage, and the wall sounded different here." Tyler tugged my hand. "Is this one of Grandma's secrets, Mommy?" "I think so, baby." Roger stepped back, giving us space. I want you to know something, Mrs. Rayburn. Your mother called me 2 months before she passed. Said if Frank Rayburn ever tried to sell this house, I should buy it. Paid me twice the asking price up front to guarantee I'd be the buyer. She said I'd understand everything once we found what needed to be found. My hands trembled as I approached the safe. The engraving was beautiful, professional. This wasn't some recent addition. This had been here for years, waiting. I entered Dad's birthday, each number a small act of faith. 04151963. The lock clicked. The sound echoed through the basement like a bell. She knew, I whispered. She knew Frank would do this. Roger nodded. She also knew I'd call you. Gave me your number, told me to wait exactly 2 months after the sale, then start renovating the basement. She said you'd need time to grieve properly first. I turned the handle. Inside the safe were 3 manila envelopes, a letter with my name on it in Mom's precise handwriting, and a small wooden box I recognized as my father's cigar box, the one that had supposedly been lost in a flood 20 years ago. "Do you want privacy?" Roger asked quietly. I looked at this stranger who my mother had trusted with her final plan. "Stay, please. I think she wanted a witness." With Tyler pressed against my side and Roger Hutchins standing as sentinel, I opened the letter that would change everything. My mother's voice seemed to fill the basement as I read the first line aloud. "My dearest Melinda, if you're reading this, then Frank did exactly what I expected." Inside the safe were 3 manila envelopes, each one labeled in Mom's careful handwriting, a letter with my name on it, and the small wooden box. My hands shook as I unfolded the letter, dated 6 months before her death. Tyler pressed closer, and Roger stood quietly by the stairs, giving us space while staying as a witness. "My dearest Melinda, if you're reading this, then Frank did exactly what I expected. He's been circling like a vulture since my diagnosis, bringing papers for me to sign for my own good. He thinks I'm just a foolish, dying woman who trusts too easily. What he doesn't know is that every document he has is worthless. The real deed to this house, the one your father and I signed together in 1983, is in envelope 1, along with the deed to the lake cabin at Sterling Falls that Frank doesn't know exists. Your father bought it as a surprise for our 10th anniversary. He died 2 weeks later before he could tell anyone but me. I've been renting it out for 33 years. Envelope 2 contains bank statements for an account Frank knows nothing about. There's $340,000 in accumulated rent from the cabin, plus your grandmother's actual inheritance that Frank stole. Yes, I knew about the missing $200,000 he claimed went to estate taxes. I've been collecting evidence for 15 years. Every forged signature, every falsified document, every diverted payment. It's all here. Envelope 3 has photographs of every family heirloom Frank took from the house. I cataloged everything the week before I let him help me organize. Serial numbers, appraisals, photographs, all notarized and dated. He has no legal right to any of it. The lawyer Harold Wexler has copies of everything. He's been waiting for my death to contact you, but I wanted you to find this first. I needed you to know that your mother wasn't a victim. I was a surgical nurse for 30 years, but I also spent 10 years managing the hospital's legal compliance department. I know exactly how to document a crime. Frank always underestimated me because I was just a nurse. He never knew that I helped prosecute 3 cases of Medicare fraud that sent hospital administrators to prison. I know how criminals think because I've helped catch them. Roger Hutchins isn't just a random buyer. He's a good man whose daughter I saved during emergency surgery 15 years ago. He owes me nothing, but he insisted on helping when I explained Frank's plan. The money I paid him to buy this house is technically yours, a loan from the cabin account. He'll sell it back to you whenever you're ready. All my love. Mom. P.S. Check Dad's cigar box. Frank spent years looking for it. He never thought to check behind the wall he insulted me for keeping blank. I opened the wooden box with trembling fingers. Inside were my father's watch, his wedding ring, and a flash drive labeled Frank's Greatest Hits. Roger stepped forward. "Your mother gave me something too." He pulled out his phone and showed me a video. It was Mom, clear-eyed and sharp, sitting in this very basement 2 months before she died. "This is Dorothy Rayburn," she said in the video, her voice strong. "I am of sound mind and body despite my terminal diagnosis. I am creating this record to establish that any document supposedly signed by me giving Frank Rayburn power of attorney or ownership of my house are forgeries. I have never signed such papers. I have arranged for the legal owner of this house, my daughter Melinda, to receive her rightful inheritance despite Frank's attempts at theft." "There's more," Roger said quietly. "She recorded Frank. She had a nanny cam in her hospital room." He played another video. Frank's voice was clear, talking to someone off camera while Mom appeared to sleep in her hospital bed. "She's so drugged up she'd sign anything. Just put the pen in her hand and guide it. The notary is my guy. He won't ask questions. Bradley and Stephanie are on board. Melinda gets nothing. She's too much like Dorothy anyway, all heart and no business sense." Tyler looked up at me with wide eyes. Grandma was pretending to be asleep? She was protecting us, baby. I opened envelope 2. The bank statements showed 33 years of rental, income carefully invested, growing quietly while Frank thought Mom was broke. The cabin rental alone brought in $2,500 a month. There were also copies of emails between Frank and his children, planning the house theft, discussing how to keep me from fighting back. Envelope 3 was devastating and vindicating. Every piece of my father's memorabilia, my grandmother's china, Mom's jewelry, all photographed and documented before Frank cleaned out the house. She'd even hidden GPS trackers in some pieces. The logs showed them at Frank's house. "Your mother was brilliant," Roger said softly. "She turned Frank's greed into evidence. Every crime he committed is documented." I looked around the basement where Mom had orchestrated all of this while dying of cancer, while in unbearable pain, while Frank whispered poison in her ear. She'd let him think he'd won, all while building a case that would destroy him. "Mr. Hutchins," I said, my voice steady for the first time in months, "I think it's time to call Harold Wexler." The legal battle that followed was swift and devastating for Frank. Harold Wexler had been preparing for 3 years, ever since Mom first contacted him with her suspicions. The forged documents crumbled under scrutiny. The notary Frank had bribed confessed immediately when faced with the video evidence. Within 6 weeks, Frank was facing criminal charges for fraud, elder abuse, and forgery. The courthouse steps where I'd once cried in defeat became the place where Frank's empire collapsed. Bradley and Stephanie, faced with evidence of their participation in the conspiracy, immediately returned their shares of the house sale money. Bradley's wife called me personally, crying, saying she'd never known about the plot. Stephanie sent a check with a note that simply said, "I'm sorry. Aunt Dorothy deserved better from all of us." Roger Hutchins kept his promise to my mother. "The house is yours whenever you want it," he said, presenting me with a sales contract for exactly what he'd paid Frank. "Your mother actually gave me extra to cover any renovations I made. She thought of everything." We moved back into the house on Tyler's 9th birthday. He raced straight to the basement, where Roger had left the false panel as a reminder. The safe remained, now holding our important documents and a photo of Mom. "Grandma was like a spy," Tyler declared, running his fingers over the engraving with my name. "She protected us even when she was sick." That evening, Denise helped me unpack boxes in the kitchen where Mom had taught me to cook. "Your mother played the longest game I've ever seen," she marveled, holding up the GPS tracking logs that had located every stolen heirloom. She knew exactly what Frank would do and let him hang himself with his own greed. Frank was forced to return everything he'd taken. The china came back, the photo albums, Dad's tools from the garage, even the quilt Mom had made for my 16th birthday. Each item carried a small tag in Mom's handwriting with its history and significance. She'd wanted me to know the story behind every piece. The lake cabin at Sterling Falls was a revelation. It sat on 2 acres of prime waterfront property, now worth triple what Dad had paid. The renters were a lovely retired couple who'd been there 15 years. "Dorothy was the best landlord we ever had," they told me. "Fair, kind, and never raised the rent beyond cost of living. She said this place was about memories, not money." In the master bedroom of the cabin, we found one last surprise. A wall of built-in shelves held journals, one for each year since Dad died. Mom had written him letters, telling him about my first day of school, my graduation, Tyler's birth, every milestone he'd missed. The final entry, written the week before she died, said, "James, I kept my promise. I protected our daughter. I made sure she knows she was loved by both of us." Tyler found another treasure, a box of letters addressed to him for every birthday until he turned 18. The first one read, "Dear Tyler, your grandfather used to say that true wealth isn't what you own, but knowing who you can trust. Your mother is the richest person I know because she has you. Take care of each other. Never let anyone make you feel like you don't belong. You are a Rayburn, and that means something. Not because of money or property, but because we protect our own. We stand up to bullies, and we always find a way to win, even if it takes time. Love, Grandma Dorothy." Frank moved to Florida after his sentence of 2 years probation and community service. His dealerships were sold to pay legal fees and restitution. His children don't speak to him. Bradley sent me a message last Christmas saying he finally understood why Aunt Dorothy had always seemed sad when Frank visited. "She saw through him from the beginning, didn't she?" he wrote, "and she still treated us with nothing but kindness." Sometimes I stand in the basement, looking at that safe, thinking about the woman who raised me. Dorothy Rayburn, the nurse everyone underestimated, had protected her family from beyond the grave. She'd turned Frank's greed into his downfall using nothing but patience, planning, and a hidden safe in the basement. Mom once told me, "Melinda, when someone shows you who they are, believe them, but that doesn't mean you have to show them all of who you are." She lived that philosophy, keeping her strength hidden, letting Frank believe he was winning while she built an ironclad case against him. Every night when I tucked Tyler into bed in the room that was once mine, under the roof my father repaired with his own hands, I thanked Dorothy Rayburn for her final gift. She didn't just leave us property or money. She left us proof that justice can prevail, that bullies don't always win, and that sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one holding all the cards. Love fiercely, plan carefully, and never, ever underestimate a mother's love or a nurse's attention to detail. They see everything, remember everything, and when necessary, they protect everything that matters. If this story touched your heart or reminded you of someone special in your life, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your support helps these important stories reach more people. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more incredible true stories of family, justice, and the unexpected ways love protects us. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a story. And remember, sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't money or property. It's knowing you were loved enough to be protected, even from beyond. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.